Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Welcome back to Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our guest is Victoria Volk of the Unleashed Heart. Victoria is a creative and strategic intuitive guide who connects hurting hearts with their authentic, soulful selves to release suffering and to thrive. Victoria is a self-published author. She has advanced certification in grief recovery. She's a creator of the podcast of Grieving Voices, and she's a Reiki master. Victoria, I know there's lots of other things that you do, but I want you to have a chance to talk more about what you do to the audience. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always appreciate an opportunity to talk about grief. As you mentioned, I'm an advanced certified grief recovery specialist. And with that, when I work with clients online or in person one-on-one, I also include what's called UMAP. I'm a certified UMAP coach, and often we're in our jobs or careers most of the day. And if it's not aligned with who we are and how we're wired and what we value, there's often grief there. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the missing piece for me in offering my clients grief recovery work. And so that's been really great to be able to add that service as well. On to the many other things I do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I noticed in your bio that you do have a lot of specialties that you can offer clients, which is wonderful. Can you explain a little more about what UMAP is to those who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, UMAP is made up of 4 pillars of career satisfaction, and there's a few assessments that we do, and the end result is basically what's called a UMAP, and it's basically a map of you. And it shows what your top strengths are, what your values are, what your most preferred and least preferred skills are, and how you're wired. And so all of that wrapped together really helps me to get to know you as a person and a client, but also I can, just looking at your UMAP, I can see where there's probably some grief in your life, because often too, when we dishonor our own values or someone else is dishonoring our values, there's grief there as well. And so it really helps people to understand themselves better in a deeper way than most assessments do. It's one thing to get an assessment, but what do you do with it? And really, UMAP kind of shows you the way in a lot of ways. It shows you kind of what, where those changes need to take place. And my clients have had actually great success with it. Several, actually just in 1 week, I had 3 of them that told me they got a new job, and another had applied at places that felt more aligned to who they are based on their UMAP. And so, it's a great tool.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing about that. Can you tell us a little more on how you started your career path? Like, were there things in your personal life that led you to this path?
Absolutely. It's been 30 years in the making, really. I am a child griever. My dad passed away when I was 8, and there was some traumas that happened after that. And I just really had to grow up fast and didn't really have much of a childhood. And, people say, well, children are resilient, and that just really irritates me when people say that, because children don't choose to be resilient. They're put in a position where it's really a matter of survival, right? It's really a matter of choosing. You kind of just have to, you adapt really children adapt to often what's happening in their lives. And it can go one of two ways. It can go really badly, or it can be kind of dormant. Like you think that the child is okay and that they're thriving, but really, if those things that happen in childhood aren't addressed at the time, um, in grief recovery, we say that adulthood is childhood reenactments, and that is the absolute truth. Any issues that you dealt with as a child, you will have those patterns repeat in adulthood.
Yes, yes. And I've seen it over and over and over, both personally and professionally. So
Yeah.
yes, I agree. Now, without going into too much detail, what traumas did you experience? Like, what do you feel comfortable sharing with the audience today? Because my audience is trauma survivors.
Yeah, I have shared this before. I was molested uh, within a year of my dad's passing, and then it was a friend of the family, um, and more than once. And and then, getting to be that around that 12 years old, like it was nine and, that 9 to 12-year-old time frame. So that preteen, and that really caused a lot of upheaval in my emotional self. I didn't deal with it in a healthy way. It, and again, I mean, and this was on the heels of my dad passing away, and he was sick for 2 years. So my mom remarried also during that time. A lot of change. My sister, who I was very close to, um, she was 9 years older. So the year that my dad passed away, she joined the military. So she left. So there was a lot of change, a lot of um, loss, a lot of loss in a very short period of time. And grief is cumulative, and it's cumulatively negative. And that kind of, um, it just really stuffed a lot down. I just really stuffed it. And um, people, this was in the late 80s. The school teacher, she didn't know how to, they just didn't know. They didn't know how to address grief in children. I think that's still the case today. Um, Faculty, staff, they just don't know what to do with children who are grieving. So I'm very much an advocate for the Helping Children with Loss program that I can facilitate. But it takes a little bit of ownership in the adults to take that step, right? To learn those new tools and new information. But anyway, into my adulthood, more things just happened as life happens. And yeah, it just all stacked up. I served in the military. I was overseas in Iraq, and just that experience, you really don't have the time to process what you're going through or what you're experiencing at the time. You just do. And so I've come to realize too that there's certain things that I've had to address since that my time in the military. And so yeah, just a lot of loss, like many people experience. I'm not unique.
Yeah.
Um, and really it is the unaddressed grief that really is what causes a lot of upheaval in our lives.
Yeah. Do you think trauma most of the time just turns into grief and loss?
Trauma is what happens, and grief is what's left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the book. How many books have you written?
I have one book.
Okay.
I wrote it. I self-published it in 2017. It's called The Guided Heart,
Okay.
Moving Through Grief and Finding Spiritual Solace. A little bit of a long title. My editor named it. I'm like, just pick a name. I don't know. So I do have another book in me. It's still percolating.
Okay.
But the book that really the book and the method that changed my life was the grief recovery method. And it's based on the grief recovery handbook. And that's available on Amazon and Audible if anyone wants to read that. Now, if you're going to be like me and think that you can read the book and you can heal yourself, you'll be mistaken. We do not heal in isolation. It takes community and it takes support, yeah, and help. And that's what I didn't surrender to for many years. And I did attempt, I went through hypnotherapy in my early 20s. That did give me the courage to end a relationship that was really toxic and unhealthy. But aside from that, it didn't really get to the grief. And yeah, I mean, I resorted to alcohol and all sorts of unhealthy behaviors, and my life was kind of getting to be a train wreck. And and then I became a mom, and then I had a business, and I closed that business, and my youngest child started kindergarten, and I had midlife unraveling, and that's when I had another loss in my life that kind of opened up all the losses before it. And I think that's kind of what happens for a lot of people is you have that one loss that just kind of takes you over the edge. You just can't take it anymore. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I got to that point and I went to Google and
Dr. Google.
yep, and found the grief recovery method. And at that point too, I really just wanted to help people. I've always been someone that wanted to be of service to others. And as I worked in hospice, I worked as a CNA in high school. The medical field, I was a medic in the military. I've just always been someone that wanted to be of service. And I really wanted to help people in a deep, meaningful way. And I just didn't know what that looked like. And so I had started my business, but I still had not helped myself. And I got to the point where I knew I needed, in order for me to help others, I needed to help myself. And I knew I could not do that alone. So that was me trying to read the book when I had actually registered for certification and training, and then that was canceled. And so I got the book. I thought, well, I can do this on my own. And that didn't go very well. I was still really focused on others instead of myself. And even just trying to go through it yourself, you just can't because you need someone to be a witness to it. You need someone who's going to be able to sit with you and listen and without criticism, analysis, and judgment, and help you really look at your life as an observer. And that's really hard to do when you're in it. And so I signed up for the training in Austin and ended up investing far more than I had planned, but it was an investment in myself. And that's how I looked at it. And it changed my life. I was not the same person that came home on that plane as I was when I went. Changed my life. And everything that's happened in my life since has been because I worked on myself. I cleared up a lot of that garbage that I was carrying around.
Mm-hmm. You used a key word earlier that I feel like many trauma survivors I've worked with describe about themselves. It's a profound word to describe oneself. And that was the word train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling very much off the rails. And I'm glad you said it because it's, your truth. You also mentioned struggling with alcohol, which is a truth for a lot of survivors. If not alcohol, some other kind of maladaptive coping skill. Do you credit the program from helping you to stop drinking as well, or were there other tools that you used?
Ooh, well, that took a while, actually. It's an unpacking. It really is. It's a peeling of the onion. I actually I had made a commitment to, I mean, and this is something I haven't talked a lot about, is there's this culture of mom, like there's this mom wine culture, right? That, you stressful day, so you reach for a glass of wine. But for me, it wasn't a glass, it would be a bottle. And it would be me like 5 o'clock starting the grill, because I do the grilling, and having 2 beers by the time I would sit with my kids and I'd have a buzz. People looking at me wouldn't have thought I had an issue, but you don't need to be a daily drinker to
Right.
be an alcoholic or for it to be a problem in your life. If you are using it to feel other than sitting with what you're feeling, it's an issue because you're using it to medicate yourself. And that's not healthy. And that's what I found I was doing.
Mm.
And I just was not comfortable. I was so disconnected from myself and wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And even social situations, that's when I would binge drink. I just didn't have a sense of agency and self-control and discipline. And I had a bad night one night, and the next day, because I do get really sick usually, and I just decided that day, I don't know what happened. I heard someone was sharing a story, and it just occurred to me that this is a problem. And that day, actually November 18th, I think would be 2 years that I wouldn't have had a drop of alcohol. But there's more to the story.
Okay.
So back to the day that I decided I wasn't going to drink anymore, I quit cold turkey. And that same day, I didn't know this, but my son, who's now 16, had said to his father, boy, mom's really not much of a um, role model. And so it was this synchronistic moment, like, okay, well,
Wow.
that sealed the deal because my husband told me that later.
I imagine
So
that cut.
it did, but it was the truth.
Yeah.
The thing about the truth is it often hurts. And you have to feel that, I think, to really, you have to own that shame, I think, too. And then give yourself compassion, of
Right.
course. But so yeah, anyway, that set me on the path of I was alcohol free for 2 years. And it wasn't until this summer where I do drink now, but I'm more intentional about it, and I have more awareness about it. Um, I'm still working through that, to be honest. It's still an ongoing thing. I think like any addiction, right? It's something that you have to um, bring your awareness and intention to, for sure, to make a different choice.
No, I really appreciate you processing that with our audience and being authentic with it. Um, because it's not a substance abuse recovery show, but as you know, with trauma and grief, there's so many things that accompany it since it impacts every area of our life. Um, so our thoughts will be with you as you continue to work through that. Addictions are not easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. My drug of choice has always been food. So, and I know the struggle's real. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tend to indulge in food too. It's yeah, when we in grief recovery we call them STIRBs, the short-term energy relieving behaviors. And as you said, it can be food, it can be alcohol, it can be porn, it can be gambling, um, fantasy, Facebook, constant scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of things, lots of things.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so tell me the role of your spirituality in your recovery, because I think that's part of your recovery as well.
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, actually, well, when I was a kid, I went to Sunday school and we had gone to church, but after my dad passed away, when he was sick, I kind of stopped. And I did get confirmed. I just kind of was going through the motions like many kids do and doing what I had to. And but I really didn't have or feel a connection to God or to source or whatever you want to call it. Like in fact, I thought when you died, you just go on the ground and that's it, you know. Um, I just really had no sense of spirituality, like at all. And that really didn't change until I was like 23, when my husband came in the picture, actually.
Hmm.
Um, he was already a friend of mine. We were friends for 7 years, which still to this day is bizarre that we're married and have kids. And yeah, it's crazy how life unfolds and gives you unexpected and unplanned things.
Hmm.
Because we're not in charge really at the end of the day. I think we have free will, but I think if we surrender to the unfolding of life itself, there are many gifts that can come our way. And that's really what happened for me. And spirituality was one of them. And it's really, but as a kid too, I've always been into like the mysticism, like palm reading, astrology, like those woo woo type things.
Hmm.
Um, and Reiki is really came into my sphere after grief recovery. And that itself is a gift because I don't, me personally, I consider I'm an empath. I'm very empathic, which I felt was a curse for many, 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 many years.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't be able to do the work I do if I didn't understand energy and didn't understand or have an awareness of my own and how to protect it and how to um, nurture it and things like that and what leaks it too. So it's, yeah, it's really been a coming full circle the past 2 years since grief recovery for sure.
Yeah. And how do you think your past with both losing your dad or really, being molested and all the other traumas that you've gone through, how do you think that impacts your client work today? Do you think that's a source of, I don't know, more empathy and understanding? Do you feel like it hinders your work? A little bit of both? How would you describe it?
No, I honestly, it makes me even more passionate about hope and about the fact that we have a choice. We always have a choice. Grief makes us feel like we don't. For many years, I didn't feel like I did. I thought I was destined to suffer really for the rest of my life. I felt like that was my karma or that was my, like that was what my life was going to be like. Um, because I had this really desperate desire. I wouldn't even say desperate. I just really had this deep, deep desire to have an impact in the world. I just felt like I've always been meant for more. The thing is too, is we don't see our own potential when we are so deep in grief. Like we don't see what's possible. We don't see opportunity. We get so stuck in what is that we can't even fathom what could be. And taking just action, just whatever it is, every day towards something for you and who you want to be, that's you create momentum. And from 2014 is when I really started to dig into myself. But so this has been an ongoing, it's not an overnight thing either.
Right.
So yeah, since 2014, I've really been working on myself. I had gotten a life coach at that time, um, and I think I kind of made myself feel even more crazy because I got so hooked on programs and courses and
Yeah.
assessments, and because I just felt so not myself. I want, like, I felt so lost. Okay, if I could just understand myself better, I'll be able to figure this out and unlock everything and my life will be happy again. And that's just not how it works. All of that was avoiding what really was at the root of it, and that was my grief. But I think it all happens how it's supposed to happen too. We're ready to hear what we're ready to hear when we're ready to hear it.
Right. Right. Yes. And that goes back to spirituality too, right?
Yeah. Again, that was a continual unfolding. And I just think my life is so much richer now. There's so much more depth to it. I feel purpose in my life. I feel fulfillment. Um, yeah, it's good over here. And I just want to share with others that it's possible. I'm looking at this right now and I just feel like I need to share it because actually part of my journey too was, the spirituality. And because you mentioned it, I had gotten a tattoo. I have only one tattoo and it's let go, let God on my wrist.
Let go and let God. Okay.
And I'm just looking at this. I have this card. It's from The Untethered Soul. If you haven't read it,
It's an awesome book. Yes.
Yeah. Well, they have a card deck that accompanies it too.
Cool.
And so I have this and I just thought I'd share it. It says, let go, no matter what it is, let go.
It's wonderful advice.
Yeah, I feel like it's just, there's probably eyes rolling right now listening to that, but it's really surrendering to where you're at so you can get to where you want to be.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the eyes rolling. I think when we talk about woo-woo stuff, maybe for some reason I attract a lot of woo-woo guests on my show and a lot of Christian, well, all faiths actually. I'm very spiritual. And so there's going to be people that you will highly resonate with, especially how you told about the unfolding of both your story and your recovery and how they kind of come together. So a powerful message.
I just want to add to that. When I was deep in it though, for someone to say to me, just let it go, just let go. I would have been like, yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like easier said than done. So it's not forgetting. Trust me, it's not about forgetting what happened. It's becoming emotionally complete with what happened. And what tools and what action can you take to work towards that?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Because letting go, the next question is, well, what's next? Or what do I do instead? So it's got to be able to pick up something that fulfills you to replace it. That's not, drugs, alcohol, food, pornography, gambling, sex, yada, 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 right?
It's the how. Like, how do I do that?
The how. And even like, well, we can say spirituality is how. Well, how do you do spirituality? So, but I think, going to therapy, getting a coach, exploring your spirituality, and just trying to be open, and listening to that intuition inside of you can be part of the how. And just giving yourself that grace. Yeah.
Yeah. And asking yourself deeper questions.
Yeah. Embodiment.
Better questions.
Yeah. Embodiment type of questions. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, other than The Untethered Soul and of course your book, what other books have stuck out in your journey that have been really helpful that you would recommend to our listeners?
Oh boy. Oh my gosh. There are a lot. I mean, if I'm talking about parenting, The Unconscious Parent, that's a great one. I actually have the Wheel of Life we are allowed to shed our body, which imprisons our soul like a cocoon and closes the future butterfly. And when the time is right, we feel pain. A letter to a child with cancer. And she talks a lot about butterflies, concentration camps that she had gone to or read about. There was so many butterflies that were etched in the wood in these concentration camps. So, yeah, it's just, it's a memoir of living and die, and it's sort of her memoir, and I've just started reading it.
I've read her other books, but I have not read that one. So thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah,
It's
on Death and
it's my
Dying.
next book.
Yeah,
Oh,
on
yeah.
Death and Dying. I haven't read that.
That's really good. Really good.
I was more drawn to
Mm-hmm.
her memoir, but her life is just fat. But there are many books. There's so many books. The Grief Recovery Method Handbook, of course, bar none.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that on my office, on my desk too. Yeah. All right. Any last words of wisdom for people that are listening and they feel stuck or suffering greatly right now? Do you have words of wisdom that can implant some seeds of hope today for them?
I know the hardest thing for me, being an introvert, being an empath, you know, you grow up too with self-worth issues with trauma. You are worthy of support. You are worthy of help. And there is hope. And as long as you have hope, reach out to someone for help that isn't going to tell you what you want to hear, that will tell you what you need to hear, and will support you and hold your hand along the way.
That was beautifully said. Did you have that rehearsed?
No.
No.
No, I
Right from your
didn't.
heart. Right, I know. Right from your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Victoria, for being a guest on our show today. I think our listeners are going to really appreciate both your personal and your professional experiences. Very important message. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Always a joy to share about grief. That's weird. That's weird to say that. but it is. It's this topic of conversation that just really needs to start happening more. I think it is. Progress is happening, but we have a long ways to go yet.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your passion.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.